Here's problem 225. A speedy tortoise can run with a velocity of 10 centimeters per second, and a hare can run 20 times as fast. In a race, they both start at the same time, but the hare stops to rest for 2 minutes. The tortoise wins by a shell, 20 centimeters. What was the length of the race? All right, so we have the classic tortoise and the hare. And if we were to draw them, we have the tortoise and the hare. Alright, so let's write down what we know about each of these guys. If we look at the tortoise, the initial velocity is going to be 10 centimeters per second, which is 0.1 meters per second. And it's going to have a constant velocity the whole time, so the acceleration for the tortoise is going to be 0. Also, we know that the hare stops for 2 minutes, which means that the tortoise is going to have 2 minutes longer to travel. So that's how we're going to deal with that. We're going to think of that 2 minutes that the hare stops as being extra time for the tortoise. So the time for the tortoise is going to equal the time for the hare plus 120 seconds. Okay, and we're going to have some kind of displacement for the tortoise, which we don't know. Alright, so that's our start there. If we look at the hare, we have initial velocity equal to 20 times the velocity of the tortoise, which is going to be 2 meters per second. Acceleration for the hare is going to be 0. The time for the hare we don't know. And the displacement for the hare we don't know. But we do have a situation where we have we're going to have two equations with two unknowns, so it's solvable. So even though we only have two kinematic variables for each combatant, we can still solve this because we're going to end up with two equations to use. In particular, the displacement for the tortoise is going to equal the initial velocity for the tortoise times time for the tortoise plus 1/2 acceleration for the tortoise times time for the tortoise squared. But the acceleration of the tortoise is 0 because they have constant velocity. So we're going to have that the displacement for the tortoise is going to equal the initial velocity 0.1 times the time for the tortoise. Sounds good? That's one equation. Now if we look at the hare, we have the displacement for the hare is going to equal initial velocity times time for the hare plus 1/2 acceleration for the hare times time for the hare squared. But the hare is moving at constant velocity as well, so the acceleration for the hare would be 0, and we have displacement for the hare is equal to the initial velocity 2 meters per second times the time for the hare. Sounds good. So that's our second equation. How do we relate the two? Well, we're told that the tortoise wins by a shell. So the length that the tortoise goes is going to be one shell longer than the displacement by the hare. And we can say that the displacement then for the tortoise will equal the displacement for the hare plus the length of a shell. At least that's the way it's going to be at the end of the race. And the length of a shell is going to be 0.2 meters. Sounds good. So we have 0.1 time for the tortoise is equal to 2 times the time for the hare plus 0.2 as we substitute in from our other equations. But we happen to know that the time for the tortoise is equal to the time for the hare plus 120. So let's substitute that in for the time for the tortoise, and we now have 0.1 times the time for the hare plus 120 equals 2 times the time for the hare plus 0.2. So we have 0.1 times the time for the hare plus 0.1 times 120, which is 12, is equal to 2 times the time for the hare plus 0.2. subtract a 0.2 from both sides, subtract a 0.1 time for the hair from both sides, so we have 11.98 is equal to 1.9 time for the hair. So the time for the hair is going to equal 11.8 is what I should have there. It's going to be 11.8 divided by 1.9. And what is that? 6.21 seconds. So that's how long it takes for the hair to finish the race. The time for the tortoise is the time for the hair plus 120. So that's going to be 6.21 plus 120, or 126.21 seconds. So that's the time for the tortoise. This is all nice to know. I've always wanted to know that. But the question was, what is the length of the race? The length of the race is going to be the ultimate displacement of the tortoise, because the tortoise is the one who's going to finish the race first. And that's going to be equal to 0.1 times the time for the tortoise. So that's going to be equal to 0.1 times 126.21, and that's going to give us 12.6 meters. So the length of the race is 12.6 meters. The hare could have done it in 6.21 seconds, but the hare stopped for 2 minutes, which was the downfall, and hence the tortoise won the race. 12.6 meters long.